as of recording this, in 2024, housing prices are absolutely ridiculous. So if you want to live in any kind of normal abode, you kind of end up having to go for a mobile home, a tiny home, or just a small house. Now, if you happen to find yourself in that situation, and you happen to like making things, crafting, doing a little bit of art every now and then, well, you run into a problem because you don't have the luxury of having your own separate office space or creative space. You end up having to make one room serve multiple purposes. And in order to do that, you gotta be really efficient with your space. You gotta make sure everything's nice and tidy, nice and organized, nice and stop zooming out. Ignore that. We'll get back to that. Anyway, where was I? Yes, and sometimes you have to do all that while on a tiny little budget because someone decided to be impatient in traffic and tried to run you over while you're on your motorcycle, and now you have a crushed ankle and you have a lot of medical bills and you don't have a job and you just sorry. Therapy later. Therapy's good, y'all. Okay. Anyway, moving on. Where were we at? Right. Oh, yes. This right here is what happens when you're bedridden but want to work on 3D printing. I need a dedicated space for 3D printing, but this thing is an absolute mess right now. So while I work on cleaning that up, let's go over the plan and what I have in mind. Right, so first of all, my room is not exactly optimized right now, not even in the slightest. I kind of moved up here, threw all my furniture from my old place in here, and just kind of, rolled with it. But a month of bed rest will really show you all the inefficiencies of that, so I have this huge plan to completely redo this room. It's just, we gotta start with this printer desk for one really important reason. Turns out, resin printing is kind of a little bit toxic. Everything that you work with when it comes to resin printing has a little warning label on it, so that gives me enough of a sign that I probably shouldn't be breathing this stuff in if at all possible. So, as a janky little quick fix, I have been using this duct and this inline fan to push all the fumes out the window, but that's not exactly a permanent fix. What I'd like to do is to contain all my resin printing on this one little desk in a nice, neat, and organized way, pushing the desk up against the window, using PC fans to push all the air out, and building a nice little fume hood out of acrylic glass so everything looks nice and neat. Only problem with that is that I am in fact broke, physically and monetarily. So I have to make do with what I have already. This right here was a temporary janky setup, but I think I might actually be able to fashion it into something more permanent. You see, all this is just a shelving unit, like a really cheap shelving unit I got a long time ago, and it was sitting in my shop back home, and whenever I brought it up here, I didn't have a place to put it, so it was just sitting disassembled in all its various parts in my shop. All I really had to do for this temporary desk is just slap some pieces together, basically making one shelf and calling it a desk. But for something a little bit more permanent, I think that if I use a little bit of ingenuity, I can cut these pieces up, maybe put them in a way that they weren't exactly designed to be put in, and somehow make it into a more functional desk. Because at the end of the day, this thing has to hold a 3D printer, a wash station, all my little tools, bottles of alcohol and resin. It needs more space than just one flat table desk thingy. So yeah, let's just start slapping this thing together. How hard could it be? Famous last words. Well, for starters, things weren't off to a great start because I overcomplicated things by trying to take measurements and figure out where I want this shelf to go by using math. But then I realized I was being dumb by trying to be smart, so I decided to use the actual smart method by just holding up the things I would want on the shelf and use them as a reference. And unfortunately, my dumbness didn't stop there, because the next step was to cut the supports for the other side of the shelves, and somehow I ended up marking them all wrong. So I went out and I cut them to shape, and I smoothed down the edges a bit, and then this was the exact moment that I realized I'd messed everything up. So I had to go make another piece, so more cutting and grinding, and then I realized that since I was so focused on the placement and length and all that, I had completely forgotten about the orientation. And now I had marked 3 pieces all upside down. So I had to flip them around, which left these janky looking cuts exposed, and that was really annoying because I didn't have enough material left over to make 2 new ones. But hey, we're going for function over form, and it still works after a little bit more editing, so all I had to do was just go ahead and install them by drilling some holes and putting some bolts in there and just calling it good. But thankfully, after all that kerfluffle, the frame was complete and I could move on to adding the shelves. And that turned out to be much simpler. First, I just double checked my measurements, then I took one of the shelf boards and I cut it in half. Then I laid out all the shelf boards and decided to give them at least a little bit of aesthetic attention by using this espresso wood stain to give it a little bit more of a darker and more natural look. And after that, it was just a matter of putting the shelf boards into place, and yeah, now we have a better desk. I honestly did not expect this thing to turn out looking this good. Are you kidding me? This thing looks like it was meant to be this way. It looks like it was bought from a store or something. I'm not gonna gas it up too much because it's something I made, but at the same time, I'm looking at it, I'm like, yes, nice. So yeah, that's a pretty good progress in my opinion, but we're certainly not done yet. You see, while we have the desk done, we're gonna have a resin printer here, isopropyl alcohol wash station, God, that's a mouthful, and we're gonna have just a general cleaning station here, and all that stuff's gonna make these little nasty little fumes and chemicals, which is not good for breathing. So we need to build a little bit of a fume hood over this thing, something that's gonna come up about yay high and I mean, I went over the plan in the first place, so let's just get to building it. Righty, so in order for this whole thing to work, I gotta check one thing. You see, this printer is actually a little bit bigger than it looks, and I have to make sure that I can lift the lid entirely off. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to modify this lid to have it hinge open or separate in half, and that's just gonna be a whole problem. But thankfully, there happens to be this piece of plexiglass that is 3 foot tall, and moment of truth? Yes, with like an inch to spare, I can lift off the full lid of the 3D printer, and that means I don't have to modify it or anything, which is great. So let's move on to building the aluminum frame. Now this part was definitely the easiest part. All I had to do was lay out the angled aluminum, mark it at the length I want, clamp it together with some C-clamps, and then cut them all together to end up with a bunch of 3 foot pieces and 2 foot pieces. And after a little bit of deburring, I may or may not have gotten just a little bit ahead of myself and started assembling everything, which I'll just call it temping it in place, but you know, either way, I put myself through unnecessary work by having to do this tedious process of drilling the holes and installing the little hardware, all just to find out that I was in fact short by a piece of aluminum. So after a little bit of substitution, the front runner ended up being some box aluminum, and with everything decided and everything fitting, it was time to take it all apart again just to go out and do some painting. Which would actually end up being the crux of almost every problem that I face from here on out. But let's just not think about that right now. As it was about 17 degrees out and snowing, so not exactly the most ideal painting conditions. So I definitely rushed it just a little bit, and I used a paint primer rather than primer and then paint. And I sprayed it all black and everything looked good. So I went ahead and started putting it back into position, putting all the little bitty pieces of hardware back in. And this whole process ended up being a little bit of a... Sorry to interrupt, but hi. Yeah, I'm not really sure why I'm here right now, but like I'm sick and it's kind of hard to record videos while I'm sick, but I'm also really limited in the angles I can use with this little tight little space. So I just feel like the videos are getting boring at this point, even though I haven't edited it together yet. I just feel like every time I set up the camera to take a shot, it's just like a little boring to see the same shot over and over and over again. Anyway, I don't know if I'm gonna keep this in, but basically what we're working on is, this coffee is too hot to drink, by the way. That's why this is a prop right now. They did not put my cold foam in it. Kind of want to chop someone's head. Anyway, so yeah, basically this right here is done. This is a little janky. It'll be better later. I need to add I need to add this thing to the back. It's a blank board right now, but the purpose of that is I'm going to test the toughness of some certain resins by printing out little buckets and having them hang out all over here. storage, because this is gonna be my little work desk right here. The printers and stuff will be right here, and then I work on them right there, and that's gonna be my work desk until I get the art desk finished. That's gonna be in that corner. But again, I need to also move that there and that there, and just I'll get back to that at the end of the video. But for now, I think I've done enough talking to break up the monotony of the editing and the angles. So anyway, yeah, back into it. Let's go. YouTube things. Yes, right. So this backboard, I cut it to fit perfectly into place, but I forgot to put the little angle bracket on it first, so I had to take it back out and just use a simple piece of angle aluminum to help keep everything a little bit more sturdy on the bottom side, keep it all nice and together. And then all I had to do was install this little vent cover. Now, that brings us to the big ticket item, the most important part of this entire build, okay? I spent literally pretty much the whole budget on this one single piece of plexiglass. And I mean, I had a good plan, at least I think so. Basically, I could cut this one giant piece into two pieces. One for a huge, pretty clear cover for the front of the thingy, and the other one would be a panel on the back for maintenance to access the back of the printers and all that stuff. Now, the cheapest and most effective way I could think of to attach this giant panel to the front of this enclosure was to use these super strong neodymium magnets. Basically, I would take a pair and glue one side to the aluminum frame and the other side to the actual panel itself. But this is where everything started to fall apart. I used clamps to hold everything in place, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. But then naturally, as soon as I turned the camera off, this is not exactly the type of moment that you just set up the tripod and make a funny reaction to. All I could manage is this little selfie style video. I just grabbed my phone and I'm just like, yeah. I am genuinely sick. I have gotten to the point of moving around, but my foot is in so much pain right now. And I spent the last little bit of my little YouTube budget on specifically this piece of acrylic. So, given that the main huge focal point of this whole thing is this nice pretty piece of acrylic on the front, and I don't have money to get another piece, this is actually a pretty devastating blow. Also, I can't show this because of YouTube and everything, but I completely sliced my finger. I don't know. That's all I got. So, we'll see. On with the video, but like at another time whenever I am not having such a bad time. Yeah, so that sucked. I know it could have been a lot worse, but still, just having the nice big clean front piece of this whole project be so obviously broken in the corner, I don't know, it just really sucks. Essentially, the paint job is what threw everything off. And I don't know if it was just because it was cold out and so the paint didn't stick well, or if I didn't use true primer, or if it's just a bad idea to stick magnets with super glue onto a painted surface. I don't know. One way or another, the paint just completely ripped off of the aluminum and the whole thing came crashing down and broke in the process. But hey, I mean, there is some irony to be found in this situation. I mean, look at the title of this channel. This whole channel started because I always have these crazy random ideas and I want to see them become reality, but it never goes according to plan. And in the end, they're kind of just held together with a little bit of hopes, dreams, and yes, duct tape. So we're just gonna call that there and we're gonna move right on along. Doesn't have to be perfect, just has to be functional. Oh, and yeah, by the way, I did add some handles to the panel just to make it easier to put on and take off and decrease the chances that I drop it. And yeah, even in that process, life found its fun little ways to mess with me, so I just, sometimes you just gotta take it on the chin and keep pushing. And yeah, I'm not gonna lie, after all that trouble to finally just get this panel to just stay up by itself and to be able to take it off and put it on, yeah, that was definitely a cause for some, little light celebration. The project's not over yet. So yeah, let's move right on along because we are getting pretty close. The final major piece to take care of is the top and side panels. We have the front and back covered, but now we need to complete the enclosure, and my plan is to use this semi-clear plastic wrap. Now, working with this is an actual pain in the butt. I mean, it's seriously folded more complicated than origami, I swear. But I measured it out with a little room to spare, cut the piece, laid it over the top, and it looked like it would about work, so I started unfurling it and unfolding it, and I'm not properly explaining just how complicated it is to work with this. I know it seems simple, like sure, it's just unwrapping plastic, but no, anyway, I'm spending too long on this. Basically, moving on, in order to hold this plastic into place, what you have to use is this tacky tape. Now, you can find this in the roofing section of your local hardware store, but all it is just this like putty type stuff that is super sticky. And so you lay it out and keep the brown paper on it. And then once you're done, you put the plastic into place and you take one little piece of that brown paper off at a time. That way you can pull and stretch the plastic and tack it into place without having to worry about the rest of the plastic getting stuck where you don't want it to when you're not ready yet. So by doing that one section at a time, I was able to pull this plastic and make it look nice and neat, at least to my standards. And I think that this ended up being the perfect solution for the top and sides. And guess what? It gets us to the final stage, the finishing touches. Now I'm not gonna go over all of these, but the main important ones were that where the paint started to peel, I used, guess what? Duct tape. This 1-inch black duct tape blended right in. It covered up all the nasty scars from the paint peeling off, and just overall gave a much nicer polished look to the frame. And aside from that, of course, the front panel. I'm not gonna deny y'all this nice little plastic peel. Awesome. Okay, so now everything's put together. Everything is nice and neat, but not really. It's kind of a mess. So let me clean that up real quick. And yeah, there you have it. A nice little self-contained resin printing station. And I am so happy with how it turned out. I mean, yes, there was a lot of trouble along the way, but I mean, look at it. It turned out a lot better than I thought it would, which is saying something because, I mean, most of the time I bite off more than I can chew and it doesn't end up being all that I dreamt it up to be, but not in this case. In this case, it's actually better. So let me go ahead and show you exactly how this thing is built up, some of the little features that it has, and how it's going to affect my workflow moving forward. Naturally, the main focus is this nice little workbench right here with my 3D printer right here, my wash and cure station right next to it, and of course a little workplace just for processing the prints, taking them off the build plate, cleaning them up, and getting them nice and ready to paint. As I mentioned before, I'm going to be 3D printing some little organizers to go on this big empty shelf right here. And above everything is this nice bright shop LED light with some subtle little cable management. And speaking of cable management, I actually added a little secret shelf down here that hides the power strip and gives a place for all the cables to sit so they don't make a mess behind everything. Speaking of which, that leads to the little shelves that I built, one of which houses my resin and 3D printing accessories, and the other one holds the isopropyl alcohol and other cleaning agents. Now, as mentioned before, those cleaners definitely give off some fumes, so up top we have this nice little vent area, and it runs underneath the desk to a nice little discreet inline fan that pushes everything outside. And all that works together to make a nice, clean, efficient workspace, a designated all-in-one 3D printing station, and I'll be sure to give you a couple little clips of me using it for just that as I finish up the video. So, if you made it this far in the video, first of all, thank you, oh my gosh, and second of all, hi. It's been a while. I tried to come back like a couple months ago, and right after that, all this motorcycle accident stuff happened, and I mean, it's healing up nice, but I'm never gonna be able to walk the same again. That's just a fact, and I struggled to accept that. I'm still in the processing stage, and it means a lot in terms of my career. For those of y'all who don't know, I'm an aircraft maintainer. So I am walking around airplanes, getting up and down on them, just intensive physical work, and that's what my whole career is based off of. I don't have a college education or anything like that. I am a maintainer at heart, and so yeah, kind of not really looking good for the future as of right now. I haven't had work in about 2 months. And this isn't to say a pity party, but this is to say I've always wanted to make a YouTube channel. I've always wanted to make YouTube videos, but now I gotta take it more serious. Now I gotta actually start making more videos and to try to grow my subscribers and grow my viewers, try to get some AdSense and stuff. That's the only way I was able to afford this whole resin printing station. And so as of right now, all the money I make from YouTube is gonna be dumped right back into growing my YouTube channel. But unfortunately, I still don't have the funds to make remodeling content. This channel, while it started as making just random creative projects that I had in mind, the algorithm picked up the remodeling content and a lot of you guys joined from that. And so I hate to let y'all down. I know that y'all like remodeling content and want to see more mobile home remodels, but unfortunately I do not have a place or the money to refurbish it. So there will be a lot of aspects of remodeling, and hey, I might throw in a video every now and then like, hey, I gotta replace the tub in my master bathroom, and I'll show you how to do that. So I'll sprinkle in some of it here and there, but I mean, hey, if y'all find any other content interesting, stick around, but if you don't want to, if you want to unsubscribe, I understand, it's okay. And for anyone else who's new here and just watched this video and this is the first time seeing me, hi, welcome, and get ready to see a lot more content like this. I'm going to be building an art station behind me, a gaming station over there, and I just have a lot more plans of what to do to make this space as efficient as possible, and then make videos of the things that I do in this space. Whether it's the 3D printing, modeling, painting, all of the above. I want to have a variety makers channel, something where I can just make whatever I think of, and I make videos of the things that I make. And if I can stitch it all together, I'd really like to. But to everyone here who's supported me this far, who's watched my videos, I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. Whether you joined for remodeling content or for makers content or whatever, I'm sorry the channel has been such a mess so far. And from here on out, it should be a lot more structured and a lot more directional. So if it's not too much to ask, I'd like you to sound off in the comments. Let me know what you think. Are you excited for this new direction? What would you like to see? And yeah, if you were just here for like mobile home remodeling content, let me know. And I'm open to all criticism and feedback. So I look forward to hearing from y'all, and thanks for supporting me this far. And I'm really excited to get back into this. I've had a wild, crazy year. I moved several states. I changed my entire career path, but all of that was to be able to make more YouTube videos. And then I got in an accident. So now I kind of have to make more YouTube videos. Life's just strange like that sometimes. So yeah, sorry for dragging this video out so long. Again, if you watched this far to the end, thank you. And hopefully I provided some clarification on some things, but that's about it. Until the next one, y'all stay happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.